My child, Archangel Michael is trying to speak to you right now and calls it an emergency with only 2 minutes to respond, because those words are not just information, they are meant to create a powerful reaction inside your mind before you even have time to think clearly, and when it adds, "This could change your life forever," it connects directly with your desire for change, growth, and something meaningful to happen in your life. And that combination, authority, urgency, and promise, is what makes the message feel real and important, even when nothing in your actual surroundings has changed. Think about your first reaction when you saw it, because that moment is very important. Your attention immediately focused, your thoughts started moving quickly, and you may have felt a sense of curiosity or even pressure, because the idea that something life-changing is happening right now makes it difficult to ignore, and your mind naturally starts asking questions like, "What if this is real?" or "What if I miss something important?" And that, "what if," is exactly what the message is designed to create, because once that thought enters your mind, your attention becomes locked onto it, and you start feeling like you need to act quickly, and this is where urgency begins to control your thinking. But now, as you continue reading and slow down, something begins to change. Your thoughts are no longer reacting as quickly as they were at the beginning, the emotional intensity starts to settle, and you begin to observe instead of react, and this shift is very important, because observation brings clarity, and clarity removes confusion, and once confusion is removed, the urgency loses its power, because it is no longer supported by anything real, and this is where you begin to understand the difference between what you feel and what is actually happening. Ask yourself something simple and honest. What has actually changed around you right now, not what the message is suggesting, but what you can actually see, hear, or verify, and when you look carefully, you will realize that nothing has got changed. There is no real sign of anything urgent happening, no clear communication, no verifiable event. Everything in your environment is the same as it was before you read those words. And this realization is very important, because it shows you that the urgency you felt was not coming from reality, it was created by the way the message was written. Now your mind may still try to hold on to a small curiosity, because the idea of something life-changing is powerful, but this is where awareness becomes your strength. Because instead of reacting to that curiosity, you can question it, you can ask whether there is any real evidence supporting it, and when you realize there is none, that curiosity begins to fade, because it is no longer being treated as something real. And this is how you take control of your thinking. At this stage, your focus naturally returns to your present moment, where everything is calm, stable, and unchanged, and this is your reality, and reality is always your strongest reference point, because it does not depend on sudden emotional messages, it remains consistent, and when you stay connected to that consistency, your mind also becomes stable, because you are no longer chasing something uncertain. God message today, you also begin to understand something deeper about how such messages work. They use authority by mentioning Archangel Michael, they use urgency by limiting time, and they use promise by saying it can change your life, and when these elements combine, they create a strong emotional reaction, but they do not provide proof, they do not give clarity, and they do not connect to anything real. And once you recognize this pattern, the entire effect disappears, because you are no longer experiencing it blindly, you are understanding it clearly. At this point, your mind is calm, because it is no longer trying to react to something that is not real, and this calmness allows you to think clearly, to focus on what actually matters, and to stay grounded in reality, because real change in your life does not come from sudden, urgent messages. It comes from your actions, your decisions, and your consistency over time. In the end, this leads you to a simple but powerful truth, that not everything that sounds important is real, not everything that feels urgent is true, and your strength lies in your ability to stay calm and think clearly, no matter what appears in front of you, and once you understand this fully, you naturally remain aware, stable, and in control, because you know how to separate what is real from what is suggested. And that ability is what truly protects your peace and your clarity. Something even deeper begins to become clear, because now you are not just looking at the message, you are understanding how it affected your thinking step by step, and that awareness is what gives you real control, because at the beginning, the reaction was instant, your mind did not wait, it immediately felt urgency, importance, and curiosity, and that happened because the message combined strong elements together: authority, time pressure, and a promise of something life-changing. And when these are presented together, your brain naturally reacts before it has time to analyze, because it feels like a moment you should not miss. But now, as you slow down and continue reading, your thoughts are no longer reacting in the same way, they are calmer, more stable, and more focused, and this change itself proves something very important, that your thoughts are not fixed, they can settle and return to clarity when you choose to observe instead of react, and that is exactly what is happening right now. You are no longer inside the reaction, you are outside it, looking at it clearly. Think logically for a moment. If something truly important or life-changing was happening right now, would it come with vague instructions and a strict countdown, or would it come in a clear and understandable way, something you could verify, something that connects directly to your real life? And when you ask this honestly, the answer becomes obvious, because real situations do not depend on sudden urgency without explanation. They give you clarity, they allow you to think, and they do not force you to act within seconds. Your mind may still try to hold on to a small what if, because when something feels meaningful, it is natural to consider possibilities, but now you have awareness, and awareness allows you to question those thoughts instead of following them, and when you see that there is no real proof, no real evidence, and no real change in your surroundings, those thoughts begin to lose their strength, because they are no longer supported by reality. Now bring your focus back to your surroundings again. Everything is still normal, nothing has changed, there is no real event happening, and this simple observation grounds you, because reality is always consistent, it does not depend on sudden or emotional messages, and when you stay connected to that reality, your mind becomes calm again, because you are no longer chasing something uncertain. At this stage, you also begin to understand how influence works, because the message used authority by mentioning Archangel Michael, urgency by limiting time, and promise by saying it could reaction, but now that you recognize the pattern, it no longer feels powerful, it feels predictable, and once something becomes predictable, it loses its effect, because you are no longer experiencing it blindly. You are now in control of your attention, and that is very important, because whatever you focus on starts to feel important, but when you take your attention back, the influence disappears, and this is what you have done. You have shifted your focus from reacting to understanding, and that shift is what brings clarity. In the end, this leads you to a simple realization, that not everything that feels urgent is real, not everything that sounds powerful is true, and your response should always come from awareness, not from pressure, and once you understand this deeply, you naturally remain calm, stable, and in control in any situation, because you know how to pause and think before. Because now you are not just understanding the message, you are fully understanding how your mind responded to it, and that awareness changes everything, because earlier the message felt important, urgent, and almost real, but now you can clearly see that nothing in your actual life ever supported that feeling, and that is the key difference between reaction and reality, because reaction is fast and emotional, while reality is calm and consistent. Think about how your thoughts moved step by step. At first they were quick, trying to make sense of what you read, trying to connect it with something meaningful, but now they are slower, clearer, and more stable, because you have already realized that there is no real situation behind the message, and once your mind understands that clearly, it stops creating unnecessary urgency or curiosity, because there is nothing left to react to, and that is why you feel calmer now than you did at the beginning. You also begin to understand something deeper about attention, that whatever you focus on starts to feel important, and at the beginning, your focus was completely on the message, which is why it felt powerful, but now your focus has shifted to understanding it, and that shift removes its effect, because you are no longer giving it the same level of importance, and this is a very important realization, because it shows you that your attention is something you can control, and where you choose to place it determines how you experience a situation, if you ignore this message. At this stage, your mind is no longer creating what-if scenarios, because you have already seen that there is no real situation behind the message, and when your mind understands that clearly, it stops producing unnecessary thoughts, and this is where stability comes from, because you are no longer reacting to possibilities, you are staying grounded in what is actually happening. And what is actually happening is simple. Everything around you is normal, unchanged, and under your control. You also begin to see that emotions, no matter how strong they feel, are not always a reflection of reality. They can be triggered by words, by ideas, or by suggestion, and once you understand this, you stop treating every emotion as something that requires action, and instead you observe it, understand it, and let it pass, and that is what keeps your mind balanced. Now, at this point, you are not reacting anymore, you are aware, and awareness is what protects you, because once you understand how these patterns work, they cannot easily influence you.